The gap appeared on the third pass through the file. I almost missed it. 8 hours and 41 minutes of contact event data, every timestamp resolving cleanly, every entry flush against the next. And then, at hour 6, a 9-minute block where the translation buffer simply stopped. No error flag, no sensor dropout, no transmission fault recorded in the vessel's own maintenance log. The data resumed at minute 9 as though it had never paused, and the automated audit system had not bothered to surface it, because 9 minutes against 8 hours reads as noise. I am Sorvan Keth, Tier Auditor assigned to the MAITH Consortium's Registry of Contact Events, and I have processed 4,217 contact files in my career. I have never seen a translation buffer go silent without a hardware cause. I flagged the gap and opened a secondary inquiry. That was 6 stand-start cycles ago. I am still inside it. The file concerns a transit incident in the Verith border-adjacent lane, one of the soft corridors the consortium uses for supply runs, close enough to human claimed space that contact events are expected and logged routinely. A human transport vessel, designation TRV Selen 7, experienced a catastrophic pressure failure in its mid-hold. The consortium's observation buoy recorded the event in full. It is that buoy's sensor feed I was auditing when I found the gap. The incident itself classified without difficulty. Pressure failure, human response crews, casualty triage, hull patch, standard categories, all populated. What the automated system could not file was the 9-minute block beginning at timestamps 06 Warren Fine 22, because the human survivor in Bay 4, cargo uphandling worker named in the manifest as D. Marsh, was not doing anything the registry has a category for. I will explain what I mean. The MAITH Consortium maintains a record category tree with 112,000 discrete entries. Every observed behavior of every known sapient species is contained within it. We have categories for altruism, for cooperation, sacrifice. These are well-documented phenomena, cross-referenced by species and circumstance, logged to the decimal point. When a MAITH archivist says altruistic act, they mean one of 47 defined subclasses, each with a threshold, a context flag, and a survival probability annotation. The tree is not incomplete. In 40,000 cycles of registry operation, no contact event has ever produced a gap. The 9 minutes produced a gap. I reconstructed the sequence from secondary data. The buoy's passive thermal array, which runs independently of the translation buffer, the continued recording throughout. I also requisitioned the vessel's own internal pressure gradient log, the seal point actuation record, and the manifest's biometric timestamp file. Every secondary source I could legally pull without escalating to a senior review. What I found, pieced together across 22 separate data streams, required me to rebuild the 9 minutes in 6-second increments before the shape of it became clear. At 06:14:22, the pressure event had been ongoing for 6 minutes. Bay 4 was depressurizing slowly enough to be survivable, according to the consortium's own models. If the occupants reached the seal point at the space far wall within approximately 11 minutes, there were 2 occupants in Bay 4 at the time of the breach. The manifest names them as D. Marsh, cargo handler, and a juvenile passenger of unspecified relation, listed only as a dependent transit rider, age approximated at 4 standard years. The juvenile was not ambulatory. The thermal record shows a small figure, stationary, near the bay's center. D. Marsh reached the juvenile at 06:14:1. Elapsed time from the start of the gap, 9 seconds. Here is where the registry fails me. I can code move toward juvenile. I can code physical contact initiated. I can code began transport of non-ambulatory dependent toward emergency seal point. Those are all known behaviors with known categories. But what D. Marsh did from 06:14:31 until 6:23:09 does not remain within any of those categories for more than a few seconds at a time. The juvenile was frightened. I can infer this from the thermal signature. The small figure's readings show the physiological profile of extreme distress. D. Marsh, whose own survival window was narrowing with each passing minute, stopped moving toward the seal point at 06:14:38. Stopped, sat down on the bay floor, held the juvenile. I have the thermal record of this. 2 overlapping heat signatures, the smaller one tucked inside the larger, neither moving toward the seal point. For 64 seconds, D. Marsh did not move towards safety. The registry has a category for immobilized by fear. It has a category for assessed situation as unsurvivable and ceased effort. Neither category fits because D. Marsh's own subsequent behavior, calm, deliberate, successful, contradicts both. What the thermal record shows, over those 64 seconds, is a slow change in the smaller signature's distress profile. The readings shift. The small figure, pressed against D. Marsh, becomes less agitated, and at 06:15:42, D. Marsh stands, lifts the juvenile, and begins moving toward the seal point at a measured pace. They reached it. Both of them. With 40 seconds to spare, I want to be precise about what I am not saying. I am not saying the act was irrational. The math, reconstructed afterward, shows D. Marsh made a correct assessment. A panicked juvenile, dragged toward the seal point against its will, would have complicated the final 15 meters in ways that could have killed them both. 64 seconds of stillness was not wasted time. It was the right allocation of available time. I ran the category query 4 times before I accepted that it would not resolve. I tried tactical delay. The system returned a confidence score of 0.31, well below the 0.80 threshold required for automatic filing. I tried dependent management, 0.44. I tried physical comfort in high-stress environment, which is a subcategory used almost exclusively for medical contexts, 0.29. I widened the search to allow cross-species behavioral analogs. Every contact file from the last 800 cycles involving a sapient organism, a dependent, and a closing survival window. Of those, 63 involved some form of physical contact between the adult and the dependent during the event. In 60 of the 63, physical contact occurred while the adult was actively moving towards safety. In the remaining 3, the adult had already determined that safety was unreachable and ceased movement entirely. D. Marsh did not fit any of them. D. Marsh had calculated, correctly, that safety was reachable and stopped moving anyway, for 64 seconds, because the child needed 64 seconds. What I am saying is that the registry has no category for this because we have never had to file it. We have categories for tactical delay. We have categories for calculated risk. We have categories for physical comfort administered in non-critical circumstances. What we do not have, what has never existed in the 112,000 entries of the contact category tree, is a category for a sapient organism in a survivable but rapidly closing window who sits down under full cognitive load and decides that 64 seconds of stillness is what the moment requires. Not because the math demands it, not because a protocol specifies it, because the small figure pressed against them was frightened, and they understood that a frightened small figure needed 64 seconds before it move. The registry system prompted me for a category at the end of my inquiry. I sat with that prompt for 2 full cycles. I have filed it as category unassigned. I have added a notation, secondary review recommended. In 40,000 cycles of registry operation, that notation has never been added to a contact file. The file will sit in an exception queue until a senior archivist reviews it and either creates a new category or overrides my notation and forces it into an existing one. I have been told, informally, that my notation is likely to be overridden, that tactical pause or dependent management will be selected as the applicable category and the file will close. I have not argued. I am a third-tier auditor. The registry is not my creation to revise, but I keep the thermal record. I have a copy on my personal archive, the 64 seconds of 2 overlapping heat signatures, neither moving, the smaller one slowly calming inside the larger. It is not a data point I can file. It is not evidence of anything the registry's category tree requires me to note. It is 9 minutes in a contact file that I cannot name, and I think about it more than is strictly professional. I think about the 40 seconds of margin at the seal point. I think about how precisely D. Marsh had calculated a window I would not have trusted myself to calculate, and how they used 64 of its seconds to sit still on a depressurizing floor and hold a frightened child. The registry will file it under something. The exception queue will clear. The 9-minute gap will become a resolved entry with a standard category designation, and no future auditor will flag it, because the automated system will see no gap. I will know what was inside it. I will also see that the senior archivist who overrides my notation will not have spent 6 cycles with the thermal record. They will look at the category confidence scores, select the closest match, and close the file before the end of their shift. That is not a criticism. It is their job. It was mine too until 6 cycles ago. That is all I have to say about the contact file. I have submitted my audit report. I have flagged the notation for secondary review as required. I will not revisit the case. I have copied the thermal record to 3 separate backup drives.